Why do most women never survive their spiritual awakening? Not because they're weak, not because they lack strength or courage, but because no one prepares them for what awakening actually feels like. They told you to be enlightening. They told you it would be empowering. They told you it would make you feel whole, connected, and full of peace. And eventually, it does. But not at the beginning, because the beginning of a spiritual awakening is destruction. It's the crumbling of everything you once believed about yourself, your relationships, your purpose, and your identity. It's the moment you realize that the life you built, the one you fought to maintain, is not aligned with your truth. And that realization is not peaceful. It's not beautiful. It's painful. It's lonely. It's terrifying. This is where most women retreat. They turn back. They silence their intuition. They trade awakening for acceptance. Because no one told them that spiritual growth would cost them their old self. This video is not just another motivational message. This is for the woman who feels like she's losing her mind, but is actually finding her soul. This is for the woman who cries at night, not because she's weak, but because she's shedding the layers of who she's not. This is for the woman who has outgrown her environment, her circle, her patterns, but feels too afraid to walk away. You're not crazy. You're awakening. And the reason it hurts so much is because your spirit is waking up from a lifetime of conditioning. You are no longer willing to live in survival mode. You're no longer willing to dim your light. You're no longer available for anything that dishonors your soul. But here's the truth they won't say out loud. Awakening will isolate you before it liberates you. It will ask you to let go of what's comfortable. It will require you to sit in silence. It will challenge everything you thought you knew. And it will break you open in ways that make you question everything, including yourself. That's why most women never survive their spiritual awakening. Because it's not just about becoming light and love. It's about facing your shadows. It's about confronting your pain. It's about grieving the old you who was never truly seen. But if you walk through the fire, if you keep going even when no one understands you, you will rise. Not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be. So if you're in the middle of the storm right now, this video is for you. Because your awakening is not a breakdown, it's your breakthrough. And today you're going to understand why everything falling apart is really everything finally falling into place. The awakening begins with breaking. Let's begin with the truth no one tells you. A spiritual awakening doesn't start with peace. It starts with pain. It begins when your soul can no longer tolerate the life you've been pretending to love. It doesn't look like a perfect meditation session or a vision or light. It looks like a breakdown. Like crying in the dark and not knowing why. Like waking up one day and realizing you don't recognize yourself anymore. Like losing friends, losing your identity, losing your sense of safety, all at once. That's where awakening begins, with the breaking. Most women don't survive this part. Not because they are weak, but because no one told them this part was necessary. Because they were taught to fear their own becoming. You see, we live in a world that teaches women to smile when they're hurting, to stay quiet when they're dying inside, and to keep the peace even if it's killing their soul. So when the mask starts to fall, when the patterns no longer work, when the pain becomes louder than the pretending, something within you starts to crack. And that's the beginning of the spiritual awakening. Everything that isn't real begins to collapse. And the fake relationships, the exhausting people-pleasing, the beliefs that kept you small, the habits you used to numb your truth. You start to realize that you spent years building a life based on survival, not self-love. And when you begin to feel that truth deeply and fully, it shakes the ground beneath you. This is where the breaking happens, where your old identity starts to crumble, where the roles you've played begin to dissolve, where you start losing people, not because you did something wrong, but because your vibration no longer matches the version of you they were attached to. You feel like you're falling apart. But what's really happening is this. You are falling into alignment. You're being stripped down to your core so that you can meet the version of you that's been buried beneath years of noise, pain, conditioning, and fear. In this process, it's not comfortable. It's not gentle. It's not glamorous. It's messy, lonely, terrifying. That's why most women turn back. They retreat into the familiar. They try to rebuild the old life with new pieces. They silence the awakening because it makes others uncomfortable. But some women, they choose the pain. They lean into the storm. They allow the breaking to happen because they understand something most people don't. Before the rebirth comes the collapse. Before the light comes the darkness. And before you rise, you must be willing to fall. This is the beginning, the unraveling of the woman you were told to be, and the awakening of the woman you were born to become. She feels everything deeply. One of the most misunderstood parts of a spiritual awakening is this. You begin to feel everything. Not just the beauty of the universe or the peace of stillness. You begin to feel the weight of every wound you've ever ignored. The energy in every room. The truth behind every fake smile. The soul behind every conversation. You become sensitive. Not in weakness, but in awareness. Suddenly, the things you used to tolerate feel unbearable. The friendships that were based on gossip feel draining. The job that once gave you structure now feels like a prison. The relationship that once made you feel secure now feels like a cage. And it hits hard because you realize that you've been living out of alignment for years, doing what you should do, saying what's polite, biting your tongue, shrinking your power, smiling through pain just to make others comfortable. But now you can't. You feel the misalignment in your gut. You feel the heaviness in your chest. You feel the ache of your intuition screaming, this is not for you anymore. This is where the real suffering begins. Because for the first time you're awake enough to feel your own suppression. You're no longer numb. You're no longer distracted. You're no longer ignoring what your soul has been whispering for years. This depth of feeling is overwhelming. It's as if every buried emotion is flooding the surface at once. Anger, grief, loneliness, shame, fear. Not because you're broken, but because your body and spirit are finally releasing what you've been carrying in silence. And it's terrifying because the world teaches women that their feelings are too much, that crying is weakness, that sensitivity is dramatic, that intuition is nonsense. So when your awakening begins and you finally feel everything, you question yourself. You wonder, am I going crazy? You wonder, why can't I just go back to how things were? But the truth is, you're not crazy. You finally connected. And what you're feeling is not the problem, it's the path. Because until you feel it, you can't heal it. And until you face it, you can't release it. Until you own it, you'll stay stuck in the patterns that your pain created. This is why most women retreat during this phase. They go back to the numbness. They go back to pretending. They choose silence over truth because truth hurts. But the ones who survive, the ones who transform, are the women who allow themselves to feel anyway. They cry, they journal, they scream. They sit with their shadows instead of running from them. And in doing so, they begin to access something sacred. Inner wisdom, emotional intelligence, spiritual clarity, self-respect. Feeling deeply is not a curse, it's your compass. It leads you away from what wounds you and toward what heals you. So feel it all, Queen. Because that pain, it's not here to break you. It's here to wake you, the loneliness of becoming. One of the most painful, yet necessary parts of a woman's spiritual awakening is the loneliness. Not just physical isolation, but a deep soul-level loneliness that comes when you start becoming someone new and no one around you understands. At first it's subtle. You start thinking differently. You become more aware of your energy. You begin setting boundaries. You stop engaging in conversations that feel low vibrational or meaningless. And slowly, people start to pull away. They say, you've changed. They say, you're distant, cold, dramatic, too spiritual, or too deep. But in truth, you're not becoming distant, you're becoming real. You're no longer faking connections to feel accepted. You're no longer betraying your intuition to keep the peace. You're no longer saying yes to things your soul is screaming no to. And that shift threatens people. Because most of the people in your own life were attached to the version of you who overgave, who stayed quiet to avoid conflict, who tolerate dysfunction to avoid being alone. But now that version of you is gone. And with her, many of your relationships will fall away. Not in bitterness, but in energetic mismatch. You're no longer vibrating at the same level. You're no longer operating from wounds, but from wisdom. And that transition can feel like death. This is the part where most women break. Because loneliness isn't just painful, it's confusing. You thought your awakening would bring more peace, more connection, more love. And eventually it will, but not right away. Before your soul aligns you with what's meant for you, it will first strip away what's not. That means seasons of solitude, nights where you cry yourself to sleep wondering if this path is worth it. Moments where you question your own journey because you feel so misunderstood. But here's what you need to hear. Loneliness is a rite of passage. It's a sacred space. It's where you meet yourself without distractions, without validation, without noise. It's where your voice becomes louder than the opinions of others. It's where you stop performing and start embodying. In this space, you learn to be whole on your own. You stop chasing external approval. You stop needing someone else to tell you who you are. And that's powerful. Because once you become comfortable in your solitude, you stop settling for connections that cost you your peace. You start attracting people who align with your healed energy, not your brokenness. You start choosing relationships that add to your growth, not distract you from it. This loneliness, it's not punishment. It is purification. It's preparation. It's the universe clearing space, not to hurt you, but to elevate you. So if you're walking alone right now, don't shrink. Don't run back to what broke you just to feel company. Stand tall and still and keep walking. Because the woman you're becoming on this path, she's worth every silent night and every unanswered call. And when you meet her fully, you'll understand why loneliness was never your enemy. It was your initiation, reclaiming the self they buried. Something powerful happens during a woman's spiritual awakening. She starts to remember who she really is, not the version she was told to be, not the version molded by society, by trauma, or by expectations, but the woman she was before the world made her forget. And that remembering, it's not always gentle. It doesn't come in one moment of clarity, it comes in waves. It comes when you start shedding everything that isn't aligned with your soul. You stop saying yes when you mean no. You stop ignoring the red flags your intuition has been screaming about. You stop making yourself smaller just to fit into a world that fears your power. And with every boundary you set, with every toxic pattern you break, with every truth you speak aloud, you begin to reclaim the woman you buried. As she's been there all along. The one who knew her worth before they taught her to doubt it. The one who loved deeply before she learned to guard her heart. The one who dreamed boldly before she was told to be realistic. She never left. You just silenced her to survive. Because at some point you were made to believe that your power was too much. Your voice was too loud. Your truth was too aggressive. Your standards were too high. So you compromise. You dimmed your light. You made yourself digestible so others wouldn't choke on your authenticity. But no more. During your awakening, you realized that every time you said yes to what wasn't meant for you, you were saying no to yourself. You were betraying your own soul just to be accepted by people who didn't even see you. Now, You are done begging for validation. You're done performing for love. You're done abandoning yourself just to feel enough. This is where you reclaim your power, not by fighting for it, but by remembering you never lost it. It was always yours. You just had to remove the layers of conditioning that buried it. And this version of you, she speaks with clarity. She walks with purpose. She no longer fears being misunderstood, because she's finally understood by herself. And yes, this new version may upset people, because when a woman steps into her truth, she becomes a mirror, the reflection of what others are still hiding from, a reminder of the freedom they haven't claimed yet. But that's not your burden to carry. You're not here to make others comfortable with your silence. You're here to embody your highest self fully, fearlessly, and unapologetically. So keep peeling back the layers. Keep honoring your intuition. Keep becoming the woman you were born to be before the world told you who you should be. Because she's not coming back. She's rising. And this time, Daisy, she was not asking for permission, rebuilding with power and purpose. After the breaking, after the isolation, after the shedding of old beliefs, something sacred begins to happen. You'll begin to rebuild. But this time, you're not building from pain. You're not building from insecurity. You're not building to impress anyone or to fit in. You're building from power and purpose. And it's different now. Before, you lived by default, reacting, pleasing, surviving. Now you live by design, choosing, creating, aligning. The woman rising within you knows her worth. She doesn't chase love, she embodies it. She doesn't beg for peace, she protects it. She no longer performs, she simply is. You stop asking, will they accept me? And start asking, does this align with my spirit? You stop proving your value, because now you live it. You begin to redesign your life with intention. You clear your space. You elevate your circle. You rebuild your routines with purpose. You make decisions based on your soul, not your wounds. And here's the beautiful truth. You no longer settle for half love, half truths, or half effort. You stop tolerating people who drain your energy just because of history. You stop negotiating your value to keep people around. You stop explaining your growth to those committed to misunderstanding you. And you no longer wait. You don't wait for perfect timing. Or you don't wait for outside permission. You don't wait to feel ready. You lead. You trust the fire within you. Because now you realize your life is not something that happens to you. It's something you create with every choice, every boundary, every moment of self-respect. The rebuilding is hard work. You will be tempted to fall back into old habits. You feel fear trying to convince you that the old life was easier. But you've come too far. You've cried too many silent tears. You've unlearned too many lies. You've fought too hard to reclaim yourself. This new chapter isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about becoming. Becoming the woman who leads herself. Becoming the woman who keeps her promises to herself. Becoming the woman who doesn't just survive her awakening, but rises from it, reborn. The version of you that's emerging, you see, she's rooted, she's powerful, she's intentional, and no, not everyone will understand her. But that's okay, because now your life is no longer built around being understood. It's built around being authentic. So take your time, move with grace, and keep choosing alignment over attachment. Because you're no longer building a life that looks good. You're building a life that feels true to you. And that's what purpose really is. Not a destination, not a job title, but a way of being. A way of waking up every day and saying, I will no longer abandon myself just to be accepted. I will live from truth even if it had cost me comfort. Because now you are no longer who you were. You are who you were meant to become. She rises unshaken and unapologetic. She didn't just survive the awakening. She became it. She's no longer the woman who needed validation to feel worthy. She's no longer the girl who silenced her truth to keep the peace. She's no longer the shadow of her past, the prisoner of her pain, or the echo of other people's expectations. She is her own source now. The woman you see today, she was born in the fire, refined by pain, carved by silence, strengthened by every moment she chose herself, even when it cost her everything. This is what rising looks like. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not about proving anything. It's quiet. It's steady. It's sacred. She walks into rooms differently now, not seeking approval, but bringing energy. So she doesn't explain her words, she embodies it. She doesn't change love, she attracts it by being whole within herself. She's not afraid of solitude anymore, because she found peace in her own presence. She found strength in stillness. She made her power in the parts of herself she used to run from. This is what many don't understand. A spiritual awakening doesn't make life easier. It makes you clearer. It makes you stronger. It makes you unshakable. And when a woman becomes unshakable, she becomes unstoppable. She no longer tolerates what drains her. She no longer entertains what distracts her. She no longer fears being alone, misunderstood, or labeled as too much. Because now she knows being too much is exactly what makes her divine. The softness they call weakness is her power. The emotions they called unstable, they are her compass. The truth they called confrontational, it is their liberation. And now she no longer bends to fit the mold. She breaks the mold with her presence. She is her own standard, her own guide, her own revolution. That's why most women never survive their awakening. Because it demands everything. It demands you to let go of your old self, your comfort, your illusions. It asks you to die symbolically again and again until only truth remains. But she survived. She did the inner work. She let it all fall apart so she could rise rooted in who she truly is. And now, she's no longer chasing alignment. She is alignment. She's no longer looking for purpose. She lives with purpose. She no longer fears what's ahead because she trusts who's becoming. Let them say what they want. Let them misunderstand. Let them doubt. It doesn't matter anymore. Because once you've met your soul, once you've heard your truth louder than the world's noise, once you've rebuilt yourself from nothing but faith and fire, you don't get return. You rise, unshaken, unapologetic, unstoppable. And if you're her, welcome home. You've made it to the other side of this message, and maybe, just maybe, something inside you has shifted. Maybe now you understand why everything had to fall apart. Why the breakdown wasn't your undoing, it was your rebirth. Why the loneliness wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Why the pain wasn't destruction, it was revelation. Because a spiritual awakening is not about adding more to who you are. It's about removing everything that was never really you. And for a woman, that process is radical. Because from a young age, you were told how to act, who to be, what to believe, and what to suppress. You were taught to give more than you had, to love before you healed, and to stay quiet when your soul wanted to scream. So when the awakening begins, it shakes the very foundation of your identity. That's why it feels like death, because it is the death of who you were told to be. So the real you can rise. Most women never survive that awakening because the world never taught them how to. They were taught to stay small, stay sweet, stay silent. But not you. Not anymore. You chose truth. You chose yourself. And even if your voice trembled, even if your heart broke open, you stayed, you faced it, you felt it. That's the kind of woman who doesn't just survive awakening. She transforms through it. Now you've begun the real work, the rebuilding, the reclaiming, the rising. And it's not about being perfect or healed overnight. It's about living each day with deeper self-awareness. It's about honoring your boundaries. It's about no longer apologizing for the space you take up. Because now you walk in alignment. You speak with clarity. You show up as your authentic self, even if it makes others uncomfortable. You've become the woman who leads herself, who trusts her intuition, who creates her own peace, her own love, her own validation. And maybe, just maybe, you realize now that the most sacred relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. Let the world call you too much. Let them misunderstand your power. Let them whisper behind your back, because they didn't walk through your fire. They didn't face your shadows. They didn't survive your awakening. But you did. And now you're not who you used to be. You're stronger. You're wiser. You're freer. You don't just glow. You burn with truth. And your presence now is not here to be liked. It's here to remind every other woman that rising is possible. So go keep walking. Keep shining. Keep becoming. Because the woman you are becoming, she's not rising for attention. She's rising for liberation. And she's not going back. Not ever again.